A lot of teams who've built on Polkadot chose to build on Substrate because they can't do what they want to in any sort of other ecosystem. But that's what makes Polkadot pretty damn cool. Use the tech that's already been developed by other parachains. That's a good way to start developing on Polkadot. If you want to build an EVM smart contract, look at Moonbeam or SR EVM. So if you want to do NFTs, look at Coretime, look at Unique Network and all the others. DeFi, there's a lot to be done with Hydra. Hydra DX is amazing. Hyperbridge is bridging for real. There's a lot of things people aren't hearing about. The first thing we got to do is get them to hear about it. Let's get outside of our bubbles. Let's get outside of our comfort zones, because there's a lot of things people could do right now on Polkadot. We don't have to wait for Jam, and we can continue to work on it as Jam comes, and Jam will be awesome too.
All right, everyone. Thank you for tuning in today. I'm here today with Asynchronous Phil. He has been a long-time contributor to the Polkadot ecosystem and is the co-founder of Lastic. Glad to have you on the TEACHMEDEFI Podcast, Phil.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Sweet. All right. It worked this time. We had a few tries on this intro, but we got it covered. I also watched the interview you did with the Kusamarian, which was really interesting. So I'm excited to dive into that more. Plus, a few months have passed, so I'm sure we have lots of interesting stuff to discuss.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for watching that. But yeah, definitely a lot has passed since then. That was recorded quite a few months ago. So
yeah. Okay, let's do it. But just to kick it off, we already chatted a bit about this just off the air a few minutes ago. How did you get started in crypto and get into the Polkadot ecosystem?
Yeah, I guess my journey goes pretty far back relative to many people now in the space, which is good because it's been growing. But I discovered Bitcoin around 2012, 2013, when there were some news articles about WikiLeaks using it for donations, and there's some like drug market, Silk Road, that was using it, and I found it really interesting because I knew about many I was following many hacker groups at the time, and attempts at doing things online that were sort of in the gray area, if not completely the illegal areas, and I just found it interesting how a lot of these things could be built with Tor, putting up markets on Tor, and they would always get shut down due to the payment processors. And when I heard about Bitcoin being used for this market, and Bitcoin, I'm like, well, this is going to be shut down for sure as well, just like all the other ones previously, like Liberty Reserve and some others. And it just kept sticking around. I kept seeing articles about it, so I just finally dug into it, looked into what is this all about, and I read the white paper and was just so excited about this because it was a really elegant solution to quite a long-standing problem, and something that seemed very, very powerful and accessible, and it was already live, and I really just became obsessed. And luckily, I'm originally from New York, the States. I moved to Berlin a few years before that, and luckily I was in Berlin, and Berlin was already quite a good hub for Bitcoin people and companies. And I quit my job, joined a Bitcoin startup where we were doing payments and Bitcoin, accepting Bitcoin, and you could buy anything on Amazon or eBay or so on.
Cool.
So yeah, I was just been following and working since then. I actually saw Gavin Wood present Ethereum at a Bitcoin meetup in Berlin, and that's when I first learned about Ethereum, really. And it started going to the hackathons there. Didn't really work much there. It was a few years later when I was just looking for a new job in Web3, and I saw Parity was in Berlin, and I'm like, oh, of course, Parity. I would love to work for them. Really great track record in the Ethereum ecosystem. Had one of the most used clients. There were two major ones at the time. Parity was one of them. And they started working on Polkadot. And that's when I started really getting into Polkadot. It was around the end of 2017. And
Mm.
yeah, I just kind of sent them an email saying, "Hey, I want to work for you." And then I had a few interviews with like Bjorn and Gav, and yeah, I got the job to do communications to really focus on the developer ecosystem back in the early days.
That's awesome. That's a long story. You've come a long way. So was it for you like, okay, this is a new thing. I find it really interesting, and I want to work in that area? Was that like an immediate thing, or was it that it kind of just developed?
It's a combination of two things, really. First of all, like Parody always had a good pedigree of talent, like a lot of really talented people. Gav started it, and then once I met more people, I was even more convinced. I always had this theory after the early days of Bitcoin that we originally thought that Bitcoin could support everything in this whole new crypto Web3 space before the term Web3 was invented. But
Mm.
like that Bitcoin could be the backbone for anything, like other like layer twos, they were called different at the time, but other tokens and everything else. And it just became clear that that wasn't going to happen. And then when Ethereum came out, it was also problematic because it was all trying to do everything under one roof, like be a sort of monolithic chain. And that was like, I remember the meetup, my question to Gav is like, how are you going to, you're basically creating a global legal system. I didn't have the word governance, but a global governance system for all these competing interests. How is it going to do that and continue to upgrade? And it was a long time ago. I don't remember the answer. I just remember I was unsatisfied. And when I learned about
Yeah.
Polkadot, I'm like, this is the way it should be done, where you have a lot of separation of concerns. I was a big history fan, and one of the coolest things I liked, coming from America, learning about American history, is the type of government structure they set up with federalism, where you have a national federal government and all these kind of like pseudo-independent states with all their own cultures and rules. But what ties them together is the federal government for security. If one of the states gets attacked, the whole army
Mm.
protects them, and akin facilitating trade between them by standardizing it and having this interstate trade that was much more easy than country trade, so international trade. And so Polkadot had like a really great setup for that. There were a few other ones coming around that time, like I think Lisk had a similar approach, or Cosmos as well, but I thought Polkadot was the one that was really thought out with regards to shared security and like being able to do anything on your own chain. And that's what really got me obsessed with Polkadot, is the fact that you can get the whole security, you can do what you want on your chain, grow your own community on your own chain, and regardless of how popular or unpopular you are, you don't affect the others and using that chain. So Polkadot became like, yeah, my full-time job then.
That's awesome. And you mentioned that you kind of just like wrote them an email and were like, I would love to come work for you. I found that interesting. So, because there might be many interested to work in crypto and Web3, but maybe they don't know where to start. And I mean, I believe you wrote an initiative application, you could call it, I believe.
Yep.
Um, so what was that like, and what would you recommend to people if they like a company or industry and they would like to start working there?
Yeah, this is huge. I'm glad you're focusing on this, because this is something that a lot of people need to know. And like I started this when I wanted to come to Berlin. First time I came, it was because I wrote an initiative application for an internship, and I got it. They weren't looking for anything. I didn't see any job posting, but I just really wanted to work for them. And I recommend everyone, if you find a project you're interested in, I mean, if you're a developer, they'll often have like a GitHub. You can just like start commenting and trying to fix issues, do some pull requests. That's a huge plus. But I think like you get a leg up from many other applicants for roles that they're looking for by simply reaching out to them and saying, "Hey, I know about you. I like what you're doing as a company. Here's my skill set. Maybe you could find something for me." And I know that there's a lot of companies just looking for talent, and if you if you're interested and passionate, just feel free to reach out. I mean, the worst thing that they could do is ignore you or say no, and that's okay. It's very flattering for a company to get that too. So you're kind of flattering them by saying, hey, I want to work for you despite not seeing anything. Because it's hard. Hiring is hard. And you kind of get, it's also like on the person applying, reach out, do that, but also like know what you're applying for. Know the company you're applying for. Don't just like it doesn't work if you don't really know what the company's doing, and if you're not passionate about them. So if you're trying to get into DeFi, trying to get into crypto, there's plenty of opportunities out there, the Polkadot ecosystem and beyond, that like really they're looking for talent. They're looking for interested minds.
That's great. Did you keep it like pretty short and sweet, or did you like a cover letter format type thing, or what did you do?
Always do a cover letter, make it personal, never use a template. Like, just take the time. It doesn't take that long. It doesn't need to be too long either. Just like 3 paragraphs about like, hey, I'm interested in you. This is what I can offer, and here's my CV attached, or my LinkedIn attached. And that's just be honest and sincere. And you can't do everything, as not one person can do everything, but like there's definitely, everyone has their own skill sets and their own advantages. Just try to talk about those.
Love it. Yeah, that's really good advice. Well, you've been around now for a while. I always find this question interesting to ask guests. If you had to pick one thing that you love about crypto, or love most about crypto, and one thing that you hate most about crypto and Web3 or the industry, what would that be?
Wow, I wish I had some time to prepare for this, because there's a lot of things I love and a lot of things I hate. So the number one thing the whole time is that you can just do it. You can just experiment with it. I studied linguistics, and then after university, I was just interested in economics. And there was a sad part, like when you're learning about economics and you're like, all these things you could test out, and you get all these people saying like, I'm a capitalist, I'm a communist, or whatever, and like you can't really test these things out. We don't know if universal basic income works, or what are the trade-offs with something like that in a system. With crypto or blockchain, you can just start trying to experiment with this stuff, and nobody's stopping you. You don't need to go to the government. You don't need to go to anyone and ask them. You can just do it. And that was the biggest, that continues to be the biggest draw for me. The thing I love most about it is that it's permissionless in many ways. Not everything in crypto is permissionless, but nobody's stopping you from, deploying a blockchain, deploying a dApp, and just starting your own economic experimentation. We've gotten to see a lot of experimentation in economics, markets, governance, in the last 10 years more than I think the previous 1,000 years, because it's just so much. Everyone can experiment so much. You have it, like, people think of crypto as this hyper capitalistic thing, but there's also other very alternative approaches, such as people are trying to do universal basic income, a lot of like donation pools, grant pools, and stuff that are really, really great as well. So it's that's what I love about it. You can experiment, nobody's stopping you. So one thing I hate the most about this space, so the thing that annoys me the most right now, at least in crypto, is riding on the coattails of decentralization. By a lot of projects who are centralized. Now, it's okay to be centralized. I want to preface that. I'm not like, I like decentralization. Everyone does. It gives you a lot of power. But sometimes you need to start off centralized, or you want to be centralized. I think what's lacking is just riding the coattails, or being in the umbrella of Web3, is letting people assume that you're decentralized without being very clear about that. And this is something that, I've done talks about previously, and I've tweeted in the past about, not anymore, I kind of gave up, but like about how, L2s on Ethereum are extremely centralized. in many ways, and people weren't even talking about this, 2 years ago, and
Yeah.
you had to just like really bring it to their attention. And now people understand that it is quite centralized and there are risks.
Yeah.
At the same time, there's other things that aren't risks. So like, if you want to be centralized, maybe don't have a centralized token issuance, or at least give people an option to escape, which is in the case of most L2s. If you put your money in, you can get it out if they decide to rug you in some ways. But
Yeah.
just be clear about the risks, of your project. Don't try to like hint that you're decentralized or something, which I think it's gotten better already in this space. Um, for sure. I think, we also have quite a reputation problem outward facing with a lot of the sort of degen DeFi stuff, which I don't have a problem with degen DeFi necessarily. It's sort of like the way these people are acting and representing our industry is the bigger
Yeah.
problem. Because there's a lot of great degen DeFi out there, which is cool, and again, more experimentation. But I think just the flaunting of like getting rich and all this stuff has been a major issue in advancing Web3 to the rest of the world.
Yeah. Interesting points. Do you think it's getting better in terms of awareness and caring about decentralization? Because I'm just curious about your take here. Because in some ways, you see the market not really caring. Certain coins have high valuations, even though you can make an argument that they're quite centralized. And perhaps also activity on those L2s and things like that. Yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's gotten a little better in the fact that people are more aware that things are centralized. I think it's also, it's okay to be centralized in many ways, and I think like what needs until things go wrong. And that's the thing.
Yeah,
So if we're in the space of building decentralized applications and decentralized infrastructure for a reason. And we can't forget about that. What is the reason? It's to be resilient against regulatory attacks, really, not just regulation that's in compliance. Everyone wants to be compliant and not do bad things that are unlawful, but it's a
yeah,
matter of like, are you going to get unlawfully attacked by your own regulators for
yeah,
this? And if you're decentralized, sufficiently decentralized, that protects against these sort of like unlawful attacks, in my opinion. So like, there's other things that are centralization causes, like infrastructure risks as well. So being decentralized will help you in the long term. But like, again, we can't expect everyone to care about decentralization as well.
yeah,
We can't expect that, everyone really is in the same sort of political mindset that others are, and that's okay. So what happens is that if things get shut down, it's because they're centralized often. And the risks over time will be more prevalent in centralized infrastructure and applications than they will be in decentralized infrastructure and applications. And it shows. It's still tough. Like right now in the regulatory environment, Bitcoin and Ethereum are continuing to battle it out, but they are kind of clearing the way for more decentralized applications to continue to be resilient.
mm. How do you stay committed to this mission and to these ideals when you, on the other hand, see other projects cutting corners and in the short term not suffering from it, perhaps even benefiting from it in the short term?
I think we can also learn from that. Like it's like I used to be very, very, kind of strict on this. And I'm
Mhm.
not so much anymore. So I want to like understand, I've been wanting to understand, okay, why are they doing this? What are the real reasons? Is it a technical thing? Is it a social thing? Or is it a economic thing? I think, we have a lot to learn from like the roll-ups that have, continued to stay centralized and so on. We just need to because, and it's not been so bad because there haven't been many exploits in those centralization points of centralization. As soon as
Yeah.
it gets to the point where you see a team rug their community, yeah, that's the risk. We built this on less trust, more truth, and we're seeing more trust-based systems, which isn't evil all the time, but it creates the potential for evil to be done. So I
Yeah.
think that there's a bit to learn. I think what teams should continue to focus on is uh, find your path to decentralization and do it quickly.
Yeah.
Every team, everything starts out centralized. Even Satoshi was the first miner. It's
Yeah.
just a matter of finding that path to uh, decentralization that is quickly done and quickly executable and accessible to most people.
Mm, right. Perhaps based on that topic, onboarding more developers and users is one of the big topics around Polkadot. And I believe you were active in this area, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. You worked in communications, and when Substrate was released, that coding framework for Parachains on Polkadot, you were working on getting developers to use it and create their own projects on Polkadot. Is that correct? And what was that like?
Yeah, when Substrate was announced, that was like one of our big goals, and it was a way to get developers. So like going to a communication strategy, it was really talking about these things. Like our audience was developers back then. That was our strategy in like pre-launch Polkadot. Getting to the mind share of developers, most of the developers were and continue to be in the Ethereum ecosystem and neighboring ecosystems. And
Yeah.
like our focus was to be involved there and have a voice in that arena, which I think was a good strategy at bootstrapping Polkadot, and I think should still continue to be the strategy, is to be present and be in the conversation so that people, if they don't even hear what you're saying, it doesn't do any good to say it. So you got to first of all
Yeah.
be in the right forums, be in forums generally speaking, be at the right conferences, be in the right groups online. Also listen, listen to what people want. I I was always very curious about like why Solana was so attractive to developers, and I went to a Solana hackathon even to get some input,
Oh,
like to
nice.
understand what they're looking for. And
Yeah.
I think like yeah, with Substrate, it was really new at the time. I mean, there was also the Cosmos SDK, but Substrate was like way different. It was really built from the ground up to build long-standing chains with light client support from the beginning, which was very new at the time. So like
Yeah.
having a light client from the beginning is very important. Um, and the fact that you could have it like sort of modular, that this chain you can plug in the things you need and disregard the things you don't need. It's powerful. So Substrate is powerful, but it's not the easiest thing. So there's quite
Yeah.
a steep learning curve, but what you get out of it is something that a lot of teams who've built on Polkadot chose to build on Substrate because they can't do what they want to in any sort of other ecosystem or any sort of SDK besides Polkadot SDK Substrate. And
Mm.
that was what we were really going for, and we see it with some of the projects being built and some of the projects already deployed. Like Hydra DX is not possible on any other framework.
Yeah.
Hyperbridge is also not possible on any other framework. These are good, amazing projects that really show the power of Substrate.
Right. That's super interesting. And what about today, though? You see all these SDKs popping up. You got the Optimism stack or whatever, and all that stuff, and you see a lot of projects adopting those. Um, what do you think? Are there things we could have done better in terms of onboarding and adoption? And what should the priorities be now to compete on that front and gain mind share in the space?
For sure. There's a lot. So like one of the biggest like learnings of, those pre-launch days on Polkadot is that not only did we need dApp developers, but we needed chain developers, like substrate developers, to build, like Moonbeam and all Akala and all these other projects. It's a big ask to build a whole chain, even if you're using a framework like Substrate or Cosmos SDK or anything else. It's a big ask. The costs are much higher, and development time much higher than just deploying a dApp on Ethereum. So what we need to do now is make it more like easy and reduce those overhead costs. And there's been some amazing progress. First of all, Substrate got more stable over the years. When I was shilling Substrate, it was they were breaking changes all the time, and it was those early adopting teams had a bit of a challenge developing on something with the ground kind of moving underneath from them, but there were a lot of reasons for that too, and eventually made a super strong product. But right now there's like, we're in a totally different world. We have a few different projects making development easier, quite a few. I think there's Tansy is the first one that comes to mind. They basically make deploying a Substrate chain super easy by having templates. Open Zeppelin also has templates for Substrate that you can use. Like Tansy takes those templates a step further. They make their own templates, EVM template, Ink smart contract template, and all these other ones. And they take care of like the sort of nodes that run it, the collators or the sequencers basically. And so it's more of like if you've heard the term roll up as a service, that's what Tansy is doing for Substrate chains. Open Zeppelin is basically giving the templates that are kind of like verified on a security level that people can start from. That's something we didn't have in the early days. That's been helping a lot. There's also other teams joining in on this as well, such as Magnet or Zeev. So the developability is about to get much easier and is already easier. Tansy's live. I suggest people look into that if they're looking to kind of mess around with deploying a quick Substrate chain. And that's what needs to be done. Is like there's a lot of work that used to be required that's just no longer necessary anymore thanks to Tansy.
Right. Hey there, just a quick message. If you're watching this and you're enjoying it, please make sure to tell a friend that might also like it, because we don't run any ads on this podcast and that helps us out a lot to keep doing this. Thank you. Another topic that's pretty hot at the moment is Polkadot 2.0, which is like the umbrella term for it, I guess. Gavin Wood presented the paper about Jam. A lot of stuff's announced and in the works. Let's dive into that part of the thing, and then we can get into blockspace and what you guys are doing with Elastic. Perhaps for people who don't really know about it, like, how would you explain Polkadot 2.0 in simple terms?
Oh, okay. So Polkadot 2.0, first of all, not simple terms. There's a working definition by one of the community members, Allison Bob, and he came up with Polkadot 2.0, including asynchronous backing, elastic scaling, and agile core time. Jam is something like beyond that as well.
Right. Okay.
So that's going with this working definition that he's trying to really get out there. Polkadot 2.0 takes what Polkadot has and makes it much more scalable, like even more scalable. And this is super important because Polkadot, there's plenty of block space. It's very scalable already, but making it so asynchronous backing increases the throughput of every parachain from first of all, reduces the block time from 12 seconds to 6 seconds. That's great. It also increases the capacity of every 6 seconds. That's amazing. Elastic scaling allows you to have multiple cores using agile core time. This is still technical, I know, but it just allows chains to be way more, resourceful. Like you can do a lot more in the same amount of time. And that's important even for a chain like Polkadot, where, there's so much room to scale already. and people haven't really even tested those boundaries. It's good to have multiple avenues to test the limits of what your protocol needs, so that you don't have to care about being super duper efficient all the time. And that's something that I'm trying to like get out there to, developers, something we can learn from Solana. I'm very for, learning from other ecosystems despite the trade-offs. And what's cool about what attracts developers to something like Solana, which now Polkadot has with asynchronous backing and these other things, is that they don't have to care so much about like, is this super efficient? And this is made in Web 2.0 with JavaScript was amazing for the user experience, but very, very resource heavy on CPUs and GPUs, and that kind of created the demand for more CPU and GPU time. But it gave everyone a better experience, and it made it so that my mom could do banking on her computer on the internet, and it made her like watch YouTube videos, and it made it very, very accessible. And what Polkadot 2.0 does is it allows the builders to create even more scalable systems that can just use up the resources much more efficiently and use more resources at the same time.
Right. And so we did have like a model for parachains to deploy, right? Like you said, with the federal government, like these chains these projects can have their own rules on these chains, and they can sort of communicate with each other and all that through the relay chain. That's the idea. So we had a model for them to deploy and become these chains. But now we're switching away from that parachain model to Coretime, right? And this is something you guys, this is the area you guys are working on with Lastic. So first of all, like, what's exciting about that switch? Like, what does that switch mean, and what's exciting about it, just to kick it off?
Oh yeah, so before was the parachain slot auctions, which gave one parachain slot, which is a core essentially. So one core every few weeks was up for auction by a bunch of parachain teams to get that access to Polkadot and become a parachain. Now, there's some like amazing things about this. On the economic side, using an auction is pretty fun, and it's very market driven. So there's no sort of issues with coding in the costs and so on. But it also makes it very unpredictable. You get it after 2 years, and then you don't know what the cost is going to be until you have to buy it again. So it makes having this regular committed service on Polkadot, this one you're going to be sweating every 2 years, wondering if you're going to be able to afford the slot or if there's going to even be one available. So what Coretime does is it really kind of reimagines the allocation and the procurement of these parachain slots, which are cores, essentially execution. They provide execution and data availability for parachains. And so instead of having an auction every 2 weeks for a single core, there's a monthly sale of multiple cores that there's a starting point to the price, and the pricing it's adjusting due to supply and demand, but there's multiple options, and you don't have to buy it at the highest price, and you can have it at the lower price. There's a descending curve and so on. There's all these fancy pricing metrics, but it's relatively cheap. And that's good because it's starting cheap anyway. We'll see where the price adjustments go. But once you get this core as a parachain, you assign that core to your parachain, and you can, in perpetuity, every month renew it at a fixed increase or decrease depending on the costs of the slots cores that are sold as well. So it creates reliability. It allows parachains to kind of budget out the next year, 2 years, 5 years about how much it's going to cost, and gives them this predictability. They just have to renew it, and it makes it much more reliable. On top of that, what's kind of cool about Coretime is the fact that anyone can buy a core and trade it with anyone else. So You can have someone like me who's not a developer, not creating a chain, buy a core with the sole purpose of trading it for either profit or I could trade it for the dot I bought for something else, maybe the token of a parachain that wants that core. So that's a whole new thing. And to get like even further into this is something that really does not exist on any other chain. And like the ability to buy to buy on a market a slot ahead of time, to buy block space ahead of time, and be able to deliver block space ahead of time to somebody else. This is not in any other system. And that's why we wanted to build Lastic on Polkadot, because you can only have a block space marketplace in its truest, purest form if I can guarantee the delivery of a block in the future to you. And that's something that has been attempted in many ways on Ethereum with like gas futures and all these other block futures, blob futures, all these other things. The difficult part is you cannot guarantee that delivery in the future. Polkadot is engineered in a way where you can buy something and sell. I can resell its future delivery to you without it being a security risk. If you did that on Ethereum, if I could give you a block like 1,000 blocks from now on Ethereum, there would be some sort of security risk involved, and that would be needed to be patched. It's just not made for that, and it is secure and tradable on Polkadot, and that's one of the most exciting things about Coretime.
Right. Can you draw the comparison again a bit more towards Ethereum, perhaps, because maybe that's what people are more familiar with that aren't part of the Polkadot ecosystem. So I think predictability was an important word you used around like how much you have to pay to have your application use up block space on the blockchain, right? Like block space. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so in Ethereum terms, I like trying to use Ethereum language, so I'm glad you reminded me to do that. So basically what Coretime is, if anyone who's familiar with blobs on Ethereum, which were just released a few months ago, blobs give data availability to rollups and L2s. And those blobs, there's only about, on Ethereum, every 12 seconds, there's 6 blobs available for data availability for rollups on Ethereum. So as a comparison, there's about 60 blobs available every 6 seconds on Polkadot, and there's going to be more, and so on. These are cores, essentially. Cores on Polkadot also do execution and data availability, but this is the sense where every time a rollup needs to post their data to Ethereum, they bid on a blob. And this is on demand. Basically, it's always on demand. Now, imagine if you could get a monthly blob subscription, like a prepaid subscription to blobs where you know as a rollup, okay, I have this blob every 12 seconds for a month, and then in 7 days before it goes on sale again, I can renew it again, depending on the current cost, and just having a slight increase or decrease. And I can guarantee another blob, a month of blob subscription for myself again, and do that every month in perpetuity. That's basically what Coretime is in Ethereum terms, as well as like the ability for anyone to buy a blob and split it up and sell it to others who need it. So if you no longer need that blob space, you can sell it again. Unfortunately, this isn't possible on Ethereum, but that's what makes Polkadot pretty damn cool.
Yeah, I like it. That was a lovely comparison. It also feels a bit like that sentiment. I don't know the exact words Gav used, but it was about sort of having trust minimized guarantees, that you can have reasonable expectations that something will happen, and it will actually happen without you having to trust a party.
Oh yeah, and when it comes to that makes it easier so that can go in a few different ways, few different levels. If you're like a user on the application level, you just want your transaction to go through as intended. We see a lot of issues around MEV, and therefore it tends to become a hot topic on that. Polkadot has a lot of good tools to develop mitigations against that. But also, on a roll-up level itself, on the L2 level, parachain level, you want those guarantees that you're gonna get that data availability posted, your data posted, and your execution processed by the main chain. And with Coretime, that really allows that to happen and allows these sort of like set it and forget it guarantees.
Right. So once you can buy Coretime, you'll have to have a place where you go and buy it, right? Geez, that's a great segue. No, just kidding. So obviously that ties into Elastic. You guys are building a marketplace for that. So yeah, perhaps can you expand on why we need this, and like who it is for, who will be buying this, and what will the platform look like, and why do we need it?
Yeah, so first and foremost, Coretime is for builders. It's for those right now building parachains or using templates from Tansy or OpenZeppelin to deploy this onto the network so they get that security and interoperability. And they can use Elastic right now in Kusama. It's live on Kusama to buy their core every sale and then assign it to their parachain, and as well as when the renewal time comes, renew it on Elastic. So that's what Elastic is doing, is creating the interface for that, as well as a marketplace for this. So in case that there's no cores available, some people might want to bid for a higher cost because they really need that core right now, and that might signal to the other owners of a core who may not need it to sell it or split it up and share a core with another team. And that's what the marketplace is for. Like when I first saw Gavin's talk last year at Decoded about Coretime, my first thought was like, I want to be a broker. I want to buy up all the cores myself and sell it to other teams and like make a profit or something. See if I can like get some of their tokens in exchange for it.
Yeah.
And there's no marketplace for it. So you need to develop a marketplace to do that, or else you just be like back channeling OTC style all the time, and that's no fun. So we are building a marketplace right now. It's going to come very, very, very soon. We have a unique approach to how we're building it. I don't want to say right now, but we're not building our own parachain. We are working with some smart contract platform as well, but we want to get to market as soon as possible, especially before the deployment of Agile Coretime on Polkadot itself. So right now, if you go to lastic.xyz, you can test it out on the Rococo testnet. And if there's cores available on Kusama, you can always get those and buy a core and assign it to your parachain.
Cool. And so it's also interesting from the perspective. Can you buy? You didn't mention, I think, instantaneous Coretime yet, or
so we don't have an interface for that, but instantaneous Coretime is like similar to, or it's on demand. It's on demand Coretime, and that works very similar way to the blobs on Ethereum, where you always have to bid every block. The thing is, there needs to be some dedicated cores assigned to this so that there are some cores available on demand. Or you, as a user on Elastic, could sell your core if you're not using it to the instantaneous pool so that others can use it for on-demand Coretime. That's also an option too, and it's possible. And there are some teams also we're talking to that are building better tooling for teams on that. The thing is, like, the reason we didn't prioritize that right now is because we're really focusing on this sort of like bulk Coretime where it's tradable. We want that to really focus on the ability for traders. Builders can be traders too. So we want this to be very, very fluid and transparent in that way, and you can't trade on-demand Coretime.
All right. And so how far are you with this? When can we expect news launch?
So we've launched the primary market interface on Kusama. So we definitely, the first ever core available was purchased on Elastic I mean, there's not many other options out there, but yeah, the the we were some enthusiasts reached out to us and said that they use Elastic. They saw some talk in that I did in East Denver. Again, you should be present at these things. It pays off.
Nice.
I recommend all teams just to be present, get to those other spaces. This guy was actually mostly he's more into Bitcoin than he is into Polkadot, and that's the kind of
Yeah.
outreach we need to work on in a communication standpoint. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's the primary marketplace is live. So what you can do now is wait for the next sale at Kusama. You can buy a core using Elastic. You can take that core, you can transfer it to someone else if you make some backroom deal. We don't have the decentralized marketplace up just yet. It will be launching soon. You can
Okay.
transfer it to someone else. You can assign it to your parachain. You can split it up and assign one chunk of time to yourself, and you can also share a core with interlacing as well with another user. So there that,
Yeah.
and you can also see what is the price. What did other people buy the cores for? It's a marketplace, so you can get all that data. Who's using which core, and things like that. We're continuously improving that as well, and we plan on being ready with the secondary marketplace before the launch on Polkadot.
That's great. That's great. Cool. Yeah, I mean, we'll put those links in the show notes for anyone that wants to check it out. Just curious, are you still active in the communication side then? I mean, we talked about these changes that are, industry leading, that are coming to Polkadot. I think everyone that talks about Polkadot from the technical side always says, the best engineers, industry leading tech and all that. So this part is really exciting and makes it easier for developers to get building on Polkadot. And from a communication side, what do you think is needed then to kind of push this message out there? And do you see developments there as well?
Yeah, big time developments. I think so. What we need to, as I said before, and I'll keep saying this forever, just like Polkadot community needs to get out there and go to where the developers are. Um, I mean, obviously there's developers everywhere in the world, but like big Web3 crypto conferences are a great place to start. The bigger ones that aren't just Polkadot focused is a huge strategy I think we need to continue to employ and kind of double down on. I know that some teams are getting treasury funding for doing this in Prague, for instance, and I'm so happy to see that because there's a lot of great developers going to ETH Prague for this. What's also going to help is Jam, which we didn't get a chance to talk about. But, building a parachain is quite a bit of work, even with the templates. And what there needs to be a bit more expansion of how we think about Polkadot. And I think what we can do on another side is try to make Polkadot developable right now. Jam will make it extremely developable for developers whether or not they want to do a smart contract, build some Oracle service without building a full chain and getting a core. Jam will make this possible for developers to do so many more things up. And I think that that's still some time away. So we need to find ways right now to make Polkadot developable in different ways and new novel ways we haven't seen before that are low-hanging fruit. And I think, we should think a bit outside of the box around these things. Use the tech that's already been developed by other parachains. That's a good way to start developing on Polkadot. If you want to build an EVM smart contract, look at Moonbeam or SR EVM or any of the other EVM chains. So if you want to do NFTs, look at Coretime, look at Unique Network and all the others. There's DeFi. There's a lot to be done with Hydra. Hydra DX is amazing right now. Again, something you can't do anything else on. Hyperbridge is bridging for real, and it's doing it on Polkadot, and it's bridging L2s on Ethereum together. It's actually finalizing optimistic rollups before they finalize themselves. And you can add other chains as a developer. Like it's very open right now. There's a lot of things people aren't hearing about, and the first thing we got to do is get them to hear about it. Let's get outside of our bubbles. Let's get outside of our comfort zones, because there's a lot of things people could do right now on Polkadot We don't have to wait for Jam, and we can continue to work on it as Jam comes, and Jam will be awesome too.
Sweet. Love the enthusiasm there. It's a great message to put out there. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Phil. It was very educational for me. I'm sure for anyone watching as well. If there's anything else you want to share, you're welcome to.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us. If you want to get in touch with us, if you're a developer, we are hiring right now. So definitely reach out to us. We have a Telegram group you can find on our website. We have some bounties on our GitHub as well. So if you just want to start with some small issues and get paid in DOT or some stablecoin, we can start off that way. We want to get some developers, anyone who's excited about anything around Coretime and blockspace. We have big visions too coming up that go might not be what people are expecting, but we have a big future ahead to do some pretty big things in the realm of blockspace markets. So please reach out.
Sweet. We'll report on it when it's out there, and you'll find the links in the show notes. Thank you, Phil, for coming on the show.
Thank you.